Good evening. It's great to see everybody out there. We've got quite a large crowd tonight. I think that's good. It speaks well for democracy. It speaks well for the county and the involvement of the citizens. So great to see you. I would ask a few courtesies since there are so many out there. I noticed a lot of signs. If you could keep those down or so they don't obscure your neighbor's view. If you have noise-making devices, electronic devices that make noise, not to include pacemakers, please shut them off at this time so that we don't have that. And that said, I will call the meeting of the August 21st regular Board of Commissioners meeting to order. And tonight we're pleased to welcome Pastor Corey Eggertson from Floyd Missionary Baptist Church to deliver our invocation. So as he comes forward, I'm going to ask those of you in the room to stand and remain standing, after which Commissioner Powell will introduce our Pledge of Allegiance.
God and our Father, we do come to you in Jesus' name tonight, thanking you for another day, God, that we get to live on this blessed earth that you've created. Lord, we thank you for this time that we get to come together as a community, Lord, and be able to let our voice be heard this evening over matters in our community. We thank you, Lord, for these chairmen that are up here, the commissioners here that are here today. We pray, God, a hedge of protection around this place, God, that everything will be done decently and in order. Lord, the Bible clearly states that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And God, tonight I pray that you would let wisdom come upon this body. And Lord, upon these people, God, we pray that the people would be heard in this county, but also the commissioners would be heard. Lord, we pray, God, that you would let victory be had here for Rockingham County. Continue to allow this place to be a place of peace, to be a place of honor, to be a place of integrity, to be a place of love, and a place where people can come. And Lord, love the outdoors and love this place, love the people of it. And God, we just ask you, Lord, that you'd please let Christ be glorified, uplift your name in all things tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
We're glad to welcome Jace Booker, a fifth grader at Wentworth Elementary School. Just let me say to you before he says the pledge, if you have a child that you would like to come say the pledge for the commissioners meeting, you can call over and talk to Susan Washburn, or you can go on our website and sign them up. So having said that, would you please render the appropriate response to the flag? And Mr. Booker, it's yours.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to take just a moment to recognize Commissioner Powell. It was his suggestion we start having the younger set supply the pledge, and it's been very popular and I think a very good experience. And Pastor Corey, words well spoken, and I don't know if God was listening, quite frankly, but I was, and I think we're all beneficiaries of that. So thank you very much. Gentlemen, we're moving on to item 4 on your present agenda. Let me just mention early up front, nobody's intentionally being rude, I know that, but a lot of folks, when we have speakers, and we'll have a bunch of speakers tonight, let's let them speak unmolested. If you want to clap at the end of their speech, mighty fine, okay? But out of courtesy. But thank you very much for that. Commissioners, you've had the agenda for 14 days or so, and what we would look for at this time is a motion to approve the August 21 agenda or amend it as appropriate.
So moved.
Moved?
Second.
Seconded? Further discussion? Hear none. All in favor indicate by the sound of aye. Aye. Those opposed by nay. Likewise, we have a consent agenda that's also been available to you for that length of time, published. The consent agenda, for those of you that are not familiar, is generally non-controversial, routine sort of items, but you have a copy of it if you have the agenda. If you have any questions about the consent agenda, I would refer you to Lance Metzler, our county manager, and he will explain the details and get you up to speed on those. That said, do we have a motion concerning the consent agenda or amendments thereto?
So moved.
Moved?
Second.
Seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by the sound of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed by nay. Right. Now, it's a little bit unusual. We're really trying hard to do this in a routine sort of manner, but now is the time for public comment. And I realize a lot of you may want to take that opportunity to speak to bring up your personal interest in the main agenda item for the night. It's okay. It's okay. But I would tell you this, we're going to reserve the right tonight if we are getting redundancy, hearing the same thing over. I'm just going to wave at you, the Queen's wave. And that means just please move on. And if you've said all you want, because we want to get as many people an opportunity to speak as we can. That said, we do have a process and a procedure. Mr. Metzler.
The public comment period shall be for the purpose of allowing members of the public to present any matter pertaining to county business or items on the Board of Commissioners' agenda. This period shall serve not as a forum for debate with the Board of Commissioners. Remarks shall be addressed directly to the Board of Commissioners and not to the staff, the audience, or media. The chairperson shall open the public comment period. Any speaker who wishes to speak shall approach the podium and not speak from his or her seat. Each speaker shall clearly state his or her name and physical address when he or she approaches the podium. Any citizen desiring to present any matter concerning the services, policies, and affairs of Rockingham County shall be allotted 3 minutes. Citizens will be allowed to yield their time on a specific topic by utilizing one more attendee's time. This would allow no more than 6 minutes. The total amount of time allotted for public comment period is 30 minutes. Your time will be displayed on the monitor in front of you. The clock will start with 3 minutes unless yielded time to 6 minutes. You will hear a beep at 1 minute to alert you to wrap up your comments. If you are to yield time or time is yielded to you, then please let the chairman know in advance. Speakers appearing before the Board of Commissioners will not be allowed to campaign for public office, promote private business ventures, or use language of a personal nature which insults or demeans any person or which, when directed at a public official, is not related to his or her official duties. A given speaker could, in essence, have 3 minutes on any eligible topic in the public comment period, and then also have 3 minutes for the public hearing item, but would not be allowed to address the Board of Commissioners twice during the public comment for any the public hearing. The Board of Commissioners may accept written statements in lieu of oral statements. Written statements can be delivered to the county manager's office. Mr. Chair.
Right, and I believe we have a couple of written ones that have been provided to you along this line. Now, if you have questions about which you signed to, I'm going to try to call your name. I'm going to try not to mispronounce it, but please forgive me. And I'm asking forgiveness for one other thing. I have tried diligently to answer everybody's emails, texts, phone calls. I know I have messed up. Sometimes I just didn't have the time, and sometimes it was my lack of knowledge. And I can't keep my grandchildren close enough so that they can correct me on all phone things and computer things. So if I missed you, I do apologize. Comments? And we'll help you if you have questions about your time limit. Jeff Seller.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jeff Sellers, 1790 NC 704, Madison, North Carolina. I'm a 37-year resident of Rockingham County, a father, a business owner, a property owner, taxpayer, and a registered voter. Mr. Richardson, you mentioned your delight in seeing the democracy in this room. My ask is that you will please listen to your people. You've heard the opinions, you've heard the comments, you've heard the heart of our community regarding this zoning and what it could possibly open the door for in the future with a casino. We ask that you'd hear us tonight, that you would allow us to vote on this if it becomes something that is an option anyway, a casino down the road, regardless of the voting on the zoning. But we do ask that you vote against the straight zoning on the 192-acre parcel beside of Camp Carefree. I'd like to defer my remaining time to Ms. Kelly Demery. Thank you.
Ms. Kelly Demery. Ms. Kelly Demery. We'll give her a second to get here.
Who's on deck, too? Who's on deck?
Right. In the interest of time, Kelly Demery, and you can remind me of that, Mr. Sellers, as necessary, but the next one on my comments list is Mr. Mark Walker, distinguished resident of Guilford County and Summerfield. Summerfield has some controversial issues if you want to get involved with those, Mark.
I'm always going to do what I believe is right, Commissioner Chairman. So,
I so agree with that policy.
and I believe we're right to be here tonight. You may ask, and kind of mention that I am from Guilford County, 6313 Autumn Crest Court. Why am I here tonight? It's because I was asked to be here by the residents of Rockingham County. I was privileged to represent Rockingham County for 3 terms, 6 years in the United States Congress. And I am not one to look the other way when I feel like there's a cause important to speak up. First of all, let me say thank you. I know this is a tough time. I've been in some places where I've had to make a tough vote. One cost me $15 million of PAC money when I voted for the Farm Bill. I get it. But we're also asking you not just to take a tough vote, we're asking you to take the right vote, to make the right vote this evening. There's a fervor that's happened in Rockingham County that you see few times in history. This is important. Chairman Richardson, let me applaud your service. Air Force Colonel, you have worked with our congressional office. You led our military review board. Because of your good work, there are 40-something high school students that went on to serve in military academies, some right here from Rockingham County. But I will tell you this, the way this has been handled, the lack of transparency has not spoken well. And that's the frustration of the people that this has come across, whether intended or not. It's come across as a railroad job that we're going to make the decisions that's best on behalf of the people of Rockingham County. That's never been the way that we've done things in the Republic. And I will tell you this, we don't want to see yourselves walk yourselves off the plank in this capacity. In the State House right now, the part of the deal was to get at least 50% of the Republican State House members to caucus in favor of this. They can't even get 25% of the State House to caucus on this. Today, a Miss Susan Freeman reached out to me. I didn't know that she was going to call me, but she wanted to talk about what Camp Carefree meant for her, that when her son was spending time out there to recover from the loss of his father who died of a premature death, it meant something to them. This community means something. To have a rezoning vote where it literally connects with 27 different residential sites. I'm asking you tonight not just to take the tough vote, I'm asking you to take the right vote. This is something right now, as you move forward, as difficult as it may be, that the people of Rockingham County and others, listen, this is the worst kept secret in Rockingham County. In fact, it's the worst kept secret in North Carolina. In fact, I'll go one more. 2 reporters from Washington, D.C. have already called me asking me about the details of this rezoning that everybody seems to know is going to lead to a different usage, which pretends to be, or not, doesn't pretend to be, casino usage. So tonight, I'm asking you to stand up, vote against this rezoning, and I'm grateful that you would allow somebody from northern Guilford County that frankly lives closer to the site than 4 of the commissioners I'm talking to tonight. But thank you anyway.
Thank you, Mark. Are you Kelly? Well, Kelly, would you come up here and share your address and speak to this group?
My name is Kelly Demery. My address is 210 Chippewa Court in Madison. If you'll pardon me, I'm nervous. Sirs, my husband and I moved here to Madison in 2016 after spending 8 years in the heart of Winston-Salem. We were ready to start a family in a town that was relatively quiet and safe. Winston-Salem was most certainly not that. We moved to get away from the noise, the lights, and the crime, the constant traffic. After considering several smaller towns in the area, we happily decided on Madison. We did our homework on the development that was coming out of Greensboro and up 220, but felt the good outweighed the bad aspects when making our decisions. We've always known that sooner or later, wherever we landed, there would be change and growth. And we were okay with that as long as it was done respectfully and in good taste to the community and environment around it. The rezoning of this parcel of land will not only put an enormous burden on the community, it directly impacts the lives of the children that live in
I'm going to
Rockingham
remind
County.
you, and then we'll start moving people out. You'll have your chance to applaud. Kelly, you're doing a wonderful job. Don't let me make you more nervous. We want to hear you. please carry on.
Can she add a little bit more time? for-
Absolutely, we do that automatically.
Children that live in this county, and especially the children that have the joy of attending Camp Carefree. I spoke of how my husband and I were ready to start a family when we moved here. We now have one child that attends the elementary school right down the road from where this parcel is up for grabs, and in a couple of years, we'll have both of our children there. I can see it now, but hope I never do. Mother and child killed in crash caused by drunk driver leaving casino in southern Rockingham County. Are you prepared to have that on your heart? Think of the children's lives that will be ripped apart because of the gambling disorders, bankruptcy, crime, personal health issues, and family problems that will live under their same roofs. Think of the kids that will never have the opportunity to just be kids as Ann Jones wished, because their families are too afraid to let them camp beside an entertainment district where drinking, gambling, possible fighting, and goodness knows what else might happen. Would you want to send your children, or especially your sick or disabled children, to a camp right beside an entertainment district or casino? I had the pleasure of seeing the grounds of Camp Carefree just last night. In all of its pristine beauty, I just couldn't imagine the monster that this rezoning will bring, being placed beside such a beautiful and truly spiritual place for children. I didn't know until doing more research last night that Miss Ann Jones was laid to rest 7 years ago yesterday. Do what she would have wanted. Do what is right. Vote no for our community, but most importantly, vote no for our children. If you do not, you will get a no vote from me if you seek re-election for your current position or any other public office, and I will actively support any efforts in the future to ensure that you have no say.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Doug Isley.
Thank you, gentlemen. Doug Isley, 1790 Flat Rock Road, lifetime resident, Rockingham County. This is my home. First thing I want to say, I want to thank all the staff that I work with. I reached out to some on the commissioner board and didn't get a return email, so I reached out to Sheriff Page, Rodney Cates, Emergency Services, North Carolina Highway Patrol, County Manager Lance Metzler, Derek Southern. I can't name all the people, and I just want to, first of all, take just a second to thank all of them for getting everything set up, the EMS, the carts, the water, the traffic control, everything. I also want to thank the folks here that have turned out in numbers and filled up these chambers. I want to thank everybody that's down the hall, outside, under the tent, everybody that's put an effort in for this. Folks, you represent these people. I know you all. Sometimes we bump heads, a lot of times we don't talk, but I know y'all. You represent these folks, and they want you to represent them by voting against the rezoning, which we all know will facilitate a casino. It's like Mark Walker said, there's no hidden secret here. There is a lack of transparency on this board. I've had conversations with the county attorney. When you go to meetings and you don't tell the public about it, and you're working on plans for a casino, and you've all told people in the community, well, there's no casino, there's no there's no casino going here. This is just rezoning. We can't control this. Well, if you can't control it, then why are you having meetings with people? Why are you meeting with the Cordish Group? Why are people taking money in their accounts? Why have people not turned in their quarterly reports for their election campaigning, their expenditures? It doesn't look good. The optics are bad. As Desi Arnaz used to tell Lucy, you got some splaining to do. This is not good. The optics for all you gentlemen is not good. I've asked y'all nicely. I've talked to, I think, everybody but Kevin, and asked you to please do what the voters say do. Don't worry about the legality part that you say that you might run into, because you've got things in place. and there's going to be more coming up about that later. But gentlemen, I beg of you now, please do what the voters had asked you to do. That's who you represent. You don't represent you. You represent 92,000 people across this county. I respect you for what you do. You have a hard job. I've done similar jobs, as y'all know, and it's not hard when you have to try to please everybody. But when you have been overwhelmingly shown by the turnout of the people in this community that they don't want it, you need to stick with it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Chris Rodenbaugh.
I'm Chiz Rodenbow. I live at 171 Carefree Lane. I can tell by the presence of everybody here that this may have been done in darkness, but it's sure getting a light tonight, and I hope you're paying attention to that, because I'm going to give a quote from a fellow named Paul Newman in Cool Hand Luke. Paul Newman, by the way, started the Hole in the Wall gang. Victory Junction Camp is one of those, similar to ours. And in the movie Cool Hand Luke, they put him in the box because his mother had passed away. They were afraid he was going to run. And he said, just because it's your job, boss, don't make it right. And that's the way I feel about what's going on here. It's been said in private that Camp Carefree is a failing institution and it has a budget shortfall, that this is going to be of some benefit to the camp in some way. And I'm not using that word that you don't want to hear, but I'm going to say that 192 acres zoned highway commercial in a tourist, entertainment district vein, whether or not this legislation that's coming passes, it still leaves the door open for about 7 pages of whatever people want to make of it. And it's an open check. It's just do what you want. There's no buffer. There's no guarantee. I live closer to that place than anybody in this room. And there are a lot of others that are here that are very close to it as well. We didn't want it. We didn't ask for it. They picked the spot, not us, not you. You were given an opportunity to get on board, but this is something that was written out long before any of us had any knowledge of it. And we're not pleased because this will have an effect on Camp Carefree. If we were suffering before, we're sure going to suffer when this goes through, because it's going to be impossible to convince parents to send their kids to a camp with what's going to be in front of them. That 192 acres is not beside us. It's our entire northern boundary. And we've got development on the southern side. We're being surrounded, and you can't sell people on this is a great place to live and raise a family and pass all these development projects and then turn around and come up with this highway commercial 192-acre farce. And I'm disappointed in everybody up here. But I'm going to tell you something. I don't know your mind. I don't know your heart. I don't know your motives. But I serve one master, and you'll see him someday.
Commissioners, thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. My address is 217 Zachary Way, Garner, North Carolina. I do not live in Rockingham County. However, I have spent over 3/4 of my life in service to Camp Carefree. I'm not going to proselytize about camp. I'm pretty sure you all know exactly what camp is, as well as everyone behind me. But I'm also here to support the landowners around this parcel that has been asked to be rezoned. I do not want them to be forgotten in this. Some of these owners have generational land that they have been on and don't want to leave, and they certainly don't want a commercial development. This is simply a rezoning request. I ask that you deny this, or at the very least table it. There are significant geographic questions on this plot of land that affect Camp Carefree as well as the landowners around. I believe we all need more time to consider what an impact this is going to be, and instead of just approving it and moving on. My brother, who is 38 years old, has been a lifelong beneficiary of Camp Carefree. He absolutely loves this place. He has become a more independent person because of this place. I grew up and became a more independent person having to care for him out there. The place is just magical because of the serenity and the quietness, and it's something that brings these children out, and they have auditory and other issues on a good day. If any commercial development were to go up next door, that would be incredibly hard for those children to continue to come out there and to experience the camp the way it was intended. Please deny this move. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Sean Ellis.
I'm Sharon Ellis. I live at 188 Ryerson Road, Madison, North Carolina. I am a lifelong citizen of Madison, North Carolina, wife, mother, and nurse. My husband and I are raising our family here in Madison. Our family, we both work in Madison. Our family is dedicated to this area. We are invested here. This is home. I have concerns about the straight rezoning of the 192 acres on 220 and the ramifications that would follow given the potential and intended use that's been well documented by media and local and state representatives. Rezoning this parcel of land would be inconsistent with the land use plan, unreasonable to adjacent neighbors, irresponsible to Camp Carefree, and a disservice to families like mine, as well as children growing up today who already have so much stacked against them. In early July, I had heard rumblings of a possible casino coming to Highway 220. I called the Planning and Zoning Department to seek information. When I relayed what I had heard, the person on the phone, although very polite otherwise, laughed at the mention of a casino coming to Rockingham County. Their words were, "Folks can really come up with some wild rumors." Between then and now, a lot has transpired, obviously, and a lot of information has come to light that, in fact, wasn't very laughable after all. One thing that I continuously hear from you all is that this hearing tonight is only for a simple rezoning hearing and nothing else. But is it? If this were only a simple rezoning, why did you all vote to change our county ordinance in June to allow state-approved gaming in highway commercial zones? Our county ordinances are among a 245-page document called the UDO, finalized in 2021 after a year-and-a-half-long process. Not one amendment has been made since its implementation until June 19th, just 2 months ago, to allow state-approved gaming. And this change occurred only weeks before media reported that a company, Cordish Group, was looking to develop that parcel into an entertainment district that would include a casino if the state legalized it. Had you all waited on changing that county ordinance to allow state-approved gaming, then we would have a regular rezoning hearing tonight, and gaming and casinos would require a special approval process. Then, if the county wanted to proceed with a casino and entertainment district, there could have been more transparent dialogue on if Rockingham County should have a casino and why. If this isn't about a casino, why has the county published a video touting the benefits of a casino in Rockingham County? This whole process has been rushed, and for what reason? Because the people of this county, and particularly this community, do not want unreasonable and uncontrolled growth. We're not anti-growth, but this growth is not good for anyone. I urge you today to deny the straight rezoning of the 192 acres. It's unreasonable and inconsistent with the land use plan that was designed and developed to strategically control growth while protecting our county's character and protecting our citizens in this county as well. Thank you for listening to me, and I do appreciate all of you taking the time to talk to me on the phone.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm going to mess this up. Butner Skearns, Griffin Road. I'm sorry.
Brittany Stevens.
Brittany Stevens.
Brittany Stevens. She is. I believe she used to be in the overflow. Hey, Brittany.
Who's on deck? Who's on deck?
My name is Brittany Stevens, 1385 Griffin Road, Madison. I appreciate the opportunity to be heard here tonight. I don't stand before you trying to debate the morality of a casino or even my personal opinion of what I would prefer happen. Often, opinions are loud and varied, but values are quiet but meaningful. Values are shown by action, and I think people choose to live in our great county in part due to shared values. In truth, I'm not necessarily anti-casino. I am, however, passionately pro-Rockingham County. I certainly would never begrudge economic growth or more job opportunities for our hardworking local folks. The issue at hand, however, the 192-acre tract on 220 being potentially rezoned highway commercial, is my concern, whatever the use. To begin with, a rezone like that is contrary to our stated, published 2040 comprehensive land use plan. The community vision cast was, quote, to maximize existing infrastructure and preserve rural landscapes and sensitive natural areas. This proposed rezoning threatens our hydrology by intruding on an unprotected watershed. It destabilizes and threatens a family institution that has benefited children with special needs and their families, like mine, since 1986. And it invites crime and chaos because the location happens to fall very conveniently near multiple jurisdictional lines, both county and state, which seems very relevant given the opioid crisis flyer we received tonight. As stewards of our North Star as it pertains to this rezoning request, I would first ask why we would ever continue to consider a rezoning of this magnitude in good conscience when there is already another viable option in the county. Reidsville has requested for the project to be theirs, and their option involves none of these negative impacts. It is better located, insulated, and equipped in terms of infrastructure, and frankly, as I understand it, would yield more money to the county because the sale would include city and county-held lands versus a privately owned tract of agricultural land. Furthermore, and I mean no disrespect, but given the gravity of this decision, if any of the press reporting is accurate regarding concerns around actionable conflicts of interest issues, should a vote go through, it seems also reasonable to assume there would be grounds for an appeal, which would mire the property, the buyers, and our local government in unnecessary litigation costs. Given all of these things, I would ask that the zoning be denied. In lieu of that the vote be postponed and a formal inquiry into potential conflicts of interest be vetted, and anyone who may need to recuse themselves do so prior to proceeding, so that our community can feel confident in whatever the decision. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Ryan Joyce.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ryan Joyce. I live at 8120 Wesley Farm Drive in Raleigh, North Carolina, but for 7 weeks of the summer, I reside at 275 Carefree Lane in Stokesdale. I've sent you my comments about the case. I grew up in Western Rockingham in the community. My parents still live in Madison, and I have a lot of family roots here. I graduated from McMichael High School, and I still deeply care about the community that raised me. I want to start by saying that if you look at the Rockingham County GIS, the largest parcel of highway commercial property on the 220 corridor is just under 18 acres. This plot is 10 times as large as that plot. It also goes roughly, we'll say 0.8 miles down into the residential, agricultural, and housing development communities, whereas all the other parcels only go 0.25 miles maximum. So you can say that it's consistent with the comprehensive Southwest Rockingham 220 corridor, but that's not true. Safety is a big concern from the Camp Carefree side. If you open up a large rezoning such as this, no matter what goes there, you're bringing in a lot of commercial traffic, a lot of unfamiliar people, and driving them straight past our road. That means that people may trespass. We're going to have to put in security measures to keep our kids safe. That is my job as summer program director, is to make sure that those kids are safe. You know, it also has the implications of the watershed. You've heard about that from some other folks, but I don't want to lose our fishing and canoeing programs because of the development of this land. Also, I just wanted to say the community is showing you what their thoughts are, and it's evident in all of these people filling 4 different rooms here. You You know, the populations that we serve at Camp Carefree, they're unique. Families come from out of state. I believe that about 20% of our campers came from out of state this summer. And they feel safe because it's in a rural area. You're going to eliminate that safety. You know, I continue to advocate for their safety. They're independent and accessible, you know, access to activities that they might not get anywhere else. So I ask that you deny this rezoning. These kids already don't have a lot. Please don't take what little that they have away from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Eddie Allison.
Good evening. My name is Eddie Allison, and my residence is 4115 Kernersville Road in Winston-Salem. However, I have emailed you guys. I own property on Carlton Road, which is less than a half a mile from this rezoning. And note, I did not receive any type of information for this rezoning, even though I'm within a half a mile. As I said, I did send you all a list of concerns that were based on the questions and answers that I think you guys started providing when a lot of people started asking questions about this. I also want to call to your attention that I sent you a list of over 3,500 signatures that included multiple of these people. Although I am not able to vote for you guys, I do pay taxes in this county, and the vast majority of the 3,500 plus signatures are your constituents, and I ask that you listen to them. So I'm here tonight to ask you to vote against this rezoning. And basically, I'm going to use a little bit of what I sent you guys in an email here. If we look at the UDO, specifically question, what is the purpose of a zoning district? Answer, if you look at number 9, protecting the character of each district and its suitability for particular uses. Okay, let's go over to the next section where it says, question, what are the factors of approving the rezoning? Look at section letter D, the zoning districts and existing land uses of the surrounding properties, including a determination of whether the rezoning is compatible with the adjacent neighborhood, especially residential neighborhood stability and character. Now I ask you guys, you're going to see the packet. You've already seen the packet. There's a map on the packet. If you look at what is considered highway commercial, or what is highway commercial at this time, you're talking about 5 to 10% of the land use on that map that the planning personnel have presented you. Now, that percent of highway commercial is going to go up to approximately 45, 50% just on that map that we saw. That's just visualization. I haven't performed the calculations. Now, I'm asking you, how can any objectionable, reasonable person see a 40% change in an area that's residential agriculture or residential to highway commercial and not consider that going against the character? As an example, if you was to take the Mona Lisa and change her by 40%, could you still call her the Mona Lisa? Yes, but she's not the Mona Lisa anymore. So I urge you, please stop this rezoning.
Mr. Malcolm Allen, I think he's downstairs.
Good.
Good evening, Malcolm. Good to see you, sir.
Good evening. I'm Malcolm Allen of Eden, North Carolina. And I thank you commissioners for the opportunity to speak on a subject of vital importance. For the past several years, we were told that parents should have more say in decisions. But with a decision of this magnitude, parents are not allowed to vote, especially when the facility is next door to Camp Carefree for kids. Anytime you have an influx of money, you have an influx of crime. We hear the financial benefits to the county, but isn't this the same sales pitch we heard with the educational lottery? Our schools are in poor structural condition because our politicians have played the shell game with us. For example, they will add $500,000 from the lottery and cut $400,000 from the budget. That's why administrators are scrambling for teachers and repairs. Of all the property in the county, why this parcel of land? Parents and the people of the county should decide what's best, not lobbyists padding a few pockets. This is another example of the government stripping away of our personal rights. We have the education lottery, mega lottery, and online betting. How much gambling is enough? Sadly, they are played mostly by people who can't afford it, trying to get lucky when the odds are stacked against them. I was told this is the Bible Belt we live in. Let's not put in our Bible for the slot machine. I grew up thinking that we as a people had a voice, but this sounds more like socialism, where the government think they know what's best for the people more than the people. I thought the Republicans were the one who stood up against socialism. Am I wrong? I hear the economy is bad and people hardly have the money to live. And your answer is to bring them a facility to take more money they don't have. When a person is drowning, you don't throw them an ankle. Don't strip away people's personal freedom and practice socialism. Let the people vote.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. And you, I don't mind the applause, but hooting and hollering, save for other places. Right. This completes our public comment. I realize that there are quite a number of folks that asked to speak that didn't get an opportunity. And there's a level of efficiency that we need to have to get through this thing. And so that said, we're going to move on to the public hearings. And to start that, I'm going to ask Marziti to come on up. All right, for those of you that don't know, Mr. Marziano is the department head for planning and zoning here in Rockingham County.
All right, this is Rockingham County's case 2023-12, Saunders parcel rezoning. This is a request to rezone a parcel of land from residential agriculture to highway commercial. It is a straight conventional rezoning. It's located off of Highway 220 and Ram Loop Road in Huntsville Township. The planning board heard this case at their regularly scheduled meeting in July. Citizens there expressed their concerns regarding traffic, safety, noise, potential changes to the rural character of the area, and Camp Carefree as well. At this meeting, a motion was made to recommend approval. However, the motion failed 2-5 with no further action after that motion. As you can see, vicinity map, we are in the southwestern corridor of the county. This is the parcel in question. As many have pointed out, it is 192 acres, give or take some decimals. It is surrounded by largely residential agriculture, does have residential protected to the north, which is a more intense subdivision, highway commercial abutting up the highway and across, so therefore adjacent as well, with other light industrial mixed in the vicinity. This parcel is, here's our, bordered on the western side by about 22 acres of flood zone, the AE flood zone that's on Hogan's Creek. And there is a stream that runs through the property, running from north to southwest. Yeah, okay. And then, as I said, this is along Highway 220. It is in our G3 land class and our O2 land class. The G3 land class is 2,500 feet on each side of the highway as a corridor developed for high-intensity commercial growth and high-intensity residential growth. The access to water and sewer allows that O2 land class to also join in with that G3 class. So the entire parcel we are considering to be appropriate for highway commercial use in regards to the G3 land class. As I mentioned, our G3 land class is 4, characterized as the county strategic growth area. It does suggest that areas in this are suitable for mixed uses, mixed intensities, and especially where there are water and sewer services. The county land use plan does want to promote the development of new commercial opportunities while also supporting existing businesses. Again, this is a non-conditional straight rezoning request. In making a decision to recommend approval or denial of this request, all uses in the RA district and the highway commercial district must be considered in the context of consistency with our land use plan, reasonableness of the request and the benefits and detriments of the surrounding area, and the relationship between the envisioned uses currently present and adjacent. No consideration of individual uses may be involved in making the decision to recommend approval or denial of this request. In your packets, you have draft consistency and reasonableness statements provided by staff, as well as all the uses listed in the RA district and the highway commercial district. And we tried formatting that, though, so they were more easy to digest as opposed to that giant chart we usually supply. More of the same that I just went over. And when we talk about this property, our minimum lot size for our highway commercial district is 20,000 square feet. We are reasonably sure that the property is of a size contingent to be able to handle highway commercial uses, as well as contain them with our development standards to minimize impacts to neighboring properties. And I'm happy to field any questions. I've got Mr. Cochran with me as well to field any historical and environmental questions.
Yeah, we're going to do that in just a moment, but I've asked our county attorney, since we've made numerous references to land use plan, to give us some background on that. And Counselor, if you would, please share that.
In 2019, the General Assembly changed the law in this state, and they created a statute called 162D. And as part of that change, every county, every municipality had to take a look at their land use plan and their unified development ordinance. And Rockingham County did that. They hired a consultant. The commissioners appointed groups of citizens who studied and drew maps and discussed where a property how it should be used, residential, industrial, light industry. And they came up with a plan after 18 months of that input. And the land use plan was approved in 2021, and the Unified Development Ordinance, which sets up the rules of implementing the plan, was approved in 2021. So I would say that these rules were written by the people of this county. Maybe folks have forgot about it. Maybe folks didn't know about it. But they were written by the citizens of the county for the use of the property located in the county. And that's what the planning board does. The planning staff presents the application to them. And the appeal is made directly to this board, sitting as a legislative body, which means you weigh the evidence and you make the decision. And I'll be glad to read the public hearing rules if you'd like for me to proceed with that. This is a public hearing we're about to have. All those desiring to speak should have signed in on the sign-up sheet located at the rear entrance of the Commissioner's chambers. Public hearings are here for receiving comments, concerns, support from you, the public, prior to the board making a decision on a specific item. A hearing is not a dialogue, it's not a debate. This is a legislative hearing. The chairperson or the designee will read aloud the specific ordinance, title, zoning issue, or other hearing matter being considered at the beginning of the hearing, and that's what the planner has just done. For zoning and land development matters, the planner presents the facts of the public hearing and the decision of the planning board, which he has just done, and the staff's recommendations. For other matters that require public hearing, related to the matter, the department head, which we don't have here, usually presents the facts. So, the applicant or the designee for the applicant is allotted 15 minutes to present their proposal. At the conclusion of the applicant's presentation, the public will have an opportunity to speak regarding the proposal. The public, those signed up to speak, will have 3 minutes to speak, or you can yield your time to another person. However, one individual will have no more than 6 minutes collectively. And there is a 30-minute time limit for these public comments. After the speakers have finished their comments, we want you to come and clearly state your name as you saw in the public comment period, your name and your address. And once you've had your opportunity to speak, either in favor or against, then the applicant has an additional 7 minutes to provide a rebuttal. Now, following the public hearing or the discussion, the Board of Commissioners will be afforded an opportunity to speak and voice their concerns of the subject matter after the public hearing is closed. The statement shall be considered in order, and action will be taken regarding the public hearing by the board. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Gentlemen, you've heard the case 2023-12 presented and the explanation of how it fits into our larger plan. Do you have questions for Mr. Marziano while he's here? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Marzi, if you could, I have 2 questions I'd like for you to address for me. I've received a lot of this in email. Many people seem to be confused about the capacity of the planning board. Some people have referred to them as experts. Would you, just for the public benefit, explain how you would define the planning board versus the people that work in your department?
The planning board is a body of residents, citizens of the county, usually have some knowledge of the land use field, but not always. We try to train them the best we can, but they're advisors to y'all based on information that they read in our ordinances and we give them. As far as professional training, we don't offer that. Some of them may have field backgrounds, engineering, real estate, architecture, what have you, development. But as far as the difference between staff, we're professionally trained. We review these things. We advise them as we advise y'all, and then they take that information and advise y'all themselves, if that answers your question.
It does. And just one more question. I've had some people tell me that they're concerned about watershed and water that runs in that area. I know that I've already discussed it with you, but for the benefit of the public, before anything can be built on this property, would you just give them an idea of what the process is?
Sure. As I probably didn't point out, because it's not in a watershed, the property is not in a designated protected watershed. But however, what goes on when someone wants to do a use, regardless of the zoning, they still need to come in and apply with a plan and permit. All that's reviewed against any of our existing watershed ordinances, state level stuff. This site's large enough that it's going to have any kind of DEQ review as well. We review it for our zoning stuff. We might send it to TRC. DOT will weigh in on it. There's a lot of other eyes on this that would hit something and review, but that all comes in at the development stage. That's why, like I said, we would have a 60-foot buffer around the stream or 30 foot on each side. That's just going to be in general for everything in the county. In a more protected watershed, it may be a little bit more intensive than that, but not usually more than 50 on each side. Yeah, 50 feet on each side, so not much more intensive. So our standard protections are pretty close to the more intensive protections as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions?
Not at this time.
Yes, sir.
Marcy, I want to talk to you about the plan and the vision for this. I believe back, well, first of all, there's water and sewer, public utilities run along 220 as well as 158. Is that correct?
Does it go all the way to 158? Yeah.
Okay. And so what year did Rockingham County start doing zoning? Because we've not always been subject to zoning. Is that correct?
That's correct. 1988 was when we instituted zoning, and that's the last time also that this parcel had been zoned.
So since 1988, this parcel's never been rezoned. It's never been requested to be zoned. It was zoned initially as residential agriculture because that was most likely what it was viewed as in 1988. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. There's been no other history on the property other than that.
But now this area, this 220 corridor was identified as early as maybe 1977 in some plan where they talked about that this would be a growth corridor that suggested the cities of Madison, Mayodan, and Stoneville pursue that because it was a travel area. Is that correct?
I believe so. There's a plan from the 70s before we even had zoning that went towards transportation design, considers 220 before it was planned to be Interstate 73, to still be a primary artery for transportation in and out of the state. Called for potential for growth and did suggest also adding utilities focused around the cities, I believe, at the time of that plan, yes.
So when, scratch that. At the time that the zoning occurred, when zoning occurred in the county, it was very possible that you could have a residential agricultural area or primary agriculture with a small commercial plot in the middle of it. Say, for instance, hypothetically, if a person had a body shop, that would have been considered a commercial endeavor. And so that's how you could have ended up with commercial in the middle of an RA area on the initial zoning. Is that correct?
I believe so. What we found, also handling a few other cases, if I may real quick, when they did zoning here, they tried to apply whatever was currently on that property at the time.
Right.
To be that zoning classification, but they also came through and gave people special use permits to continue what they were doing on their property and rezoned it, zoned the land something else. So there was a big, kind of a jumble of things happening in '88 when zoning was instituted that's been hopefully ironed out a little bit more over the last 30 years.
But now when the zoning took place and the initial zoning was applied to these parcels, the county didn't come back because there was a vision to create a commercial corridor either on 220 or other parts of the county. The county didn't come in and just arbitrarily rezone this to meet their vision. We generally wait until there's a request by the landowner to rezone property. Is that correct? Is that how we do it?
Yeah, our standard practice is to be citizen initiated or outside of the organization initiated. General statutes do allow us to initiate, but we'd still have to have property owner support. That's made clear in the general statutes, but so does anybody wanting to rezone any land needs to have the property owner support. That's why in your application packet, everybody who's on this property has a notarized signature agreeing to this rezoning request by the applicant on their behalf.
And so that was going to be my next question. The landowners, those persons that actually have a vested interest in this property, whether they be heirs or original owners or whatever the case may be, they have signed a document stating that they would wish for the county to rezone this property. Is that correct?
Yes, they've signed documents agreeing to the request, yes.
Okay.
But yeah, typically we don't self-initiate these things.
That's correct. All right, thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion, questions? Hearing none, we will call the applicant forward.
Thanks, Joe. I'm good right now. All right, I'll leave. Well, left and right, I'll get you back.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. How are you all? So my name is Will Quick. I'm an attorney with the Brooks Pierce Law Firm here representing North Carolina Development Holdings and the property owners that were just referenced, Linda Carmichael, Susan Murray, Julie Sanders, and Ellen Weitzel, each of whom has signed a document, a notarized document, agreeing to this rezoning request. My address, if that is needed, is 150 Fayetteville Street, Raleigh, North Carolina, Suite 1700. That is the Brooks Pierce Law Firm address. First, let me thank your planning staff. They have done an excellent job in putting together a packet of information. I get to go lots of places all over the state and see this process, and I commend your staff for the work they've done. They've been diligent, and they presented relevant information. Obviously, as part of their review, planning staff reached a recommendation that, based on their analysis, staff recommends approval of case 2023-12 as a request for rezoning from residential agriculture to highway commercial. Oftentimes, when I have staff support for the request we are making on behalf of a client, we sit down and or ask if you have any questions and then sit down. I understand this is maybe a little bit different scenario. And so given the attention on this rezoning, I'll use some of the time that I'm allotted and go through a few other points that I would encourage you to consider. Your county attorney referenced Chapter 160D that was recently enacted after much attention from developers, land use attorneys, and others in the state, including folks on the North Carolina Bar Association Zoning and Planning Section Council, which I was a member of at the time. Under 160D 605, you're required to make generally two statements, and you already know this, and I'm somewhat reciting this for everyone else here. Whether the rezoning is consistent with your adopted comprehensive land use plan, and whether you've analyzed whether the zoning is reasonable in light of the circumstances. Your planning staff has, I think, more than adequately addressed consistency with the comprehensive land use plan, and I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I will address one point there, and then I'll talk a little bit more about some of the reasonableness factors. First, with consistency, and I believe if I advance to a map here, are you all seeing that map? There we go. So the reference to the G3 and the O2 land classes has been brought up a few times. Obviously, this map shows the western portion of the property in the O2 rural land class and the eastern portion in the G3. Your planning director addressed the reason the G3 corridor line is drawn the way it is has to do with drawing that line equidistant from Highway 220 to create your development corridor. Even as you can see on this map, it bisects many properties just in this small map, and it obviously does that all along the 220 corridor. This line was not drawn to follow property lines, and as was observed, this property has been the size it is and under the current zoning for many, many years. The only reasonable access to this property is from the eastern side along 220, Highway 220, or possibly Ram Loop Road. There's a corner of it there. The western side is forested. As has been observed, it's in an AE flood zone, and it also borders several residential properties on that side that are already developed. Development of this property could only naturally occur from 220 towards the other direction. As planning staff pointed out, there's both water and sewer from that direction as well. For all these reasons, we would have you consider that it would be inconsistent with your comprehensive land use plan and the growth goals for the county to deny the rezoning on the basis that a portion of it is in that O2 class. Moving to reasonableness and going back to 160D 605 that I cited earlier briefly and that your county attorney mentioned, there's guidance in that statute as to what you may consider with respect to reasonableness of a rezoning request. Those factors include the size, physical conditions, and attributes of the property, how the current zoning and permitted development on the property compares to potential development in the requested class, any change conditions in the area warranting that rezoning, benefits and detriments to the current property owners, neighbors, and surrounding community, and whether the rezoning would be in the greater interest. Your own UDO generally follows those approval criteria and sets out those in slightly different language, but again, generally the same language. You're not required to consider every one of those factors, and you're welcome to consider additional factors that you find relevant. Again, I believe your planning staff has done an excellent job in setting out information in the materials, highlighting points for your consideration, but I'll walk through a couple of those and suggest a few other thoughts. First, the size, physical condition, and attributes of the property that is up for rezoning. There's no doubt that 192 acres is a large tract of land. Planning staff has already observed that because of the size, it far exceeds what is required under the highway commercial, so we check that box. The large size and proximity to a major highway also makes this tract particularly appealing to the type of high-quality mixed-use development that the client I represent specializes in. There just aren't that many large tracts in southern Rockingham County that can compare to this tract in that regard. Now, we understand that. But while the tract is large, it's already been pointed out that a portion of it is in the western boundary, is in that AE flood zone. And so that will have to be taken into consideration on any development of the property that were to go forward. That's approximately 22 acres, as your planning director suggested. Both the creek and the forest in that area also provide natural buffers to the residential communities that are on the western portion of the property. There's also forested area along much of the northern boundary where it backs up to the homes on Dogwood Acres Lane. Again, those sorts of natural buffers are helpful in determining how the property can be developed. Your local ordinances would require developers to put in place buffers and take into account setbacks. It is great for a developer to have a natural buffer and not have to go in and do something different. Sticking with physical conditions, the western third that borders, I'm sorry, I mentioned that one. There's a stream running through the middle of the property that also would have to be taken into account in any development, and that also sort of changes the size from a development perspective. Moving to another factor, how the current zoning and permitted development on the property compares to potential development that could take place if the property were rezoned. It's currently residential agricultural, as we know. There are a number of upright uses in that class that would increase the intensity of use on the property already. I'll just point out a couple. Golf courses, athletic parks, community centers, private clubs are all upright uses that would naturally increase the traffic in that area, even if those were to be developed there. Looking beyond the upright uses in the current residential agriculture, there are a couple dozen uses permitted by right with development standards. Among those are conference, retreat, event, and banquet centers. Again, that could be developed on this property right now with development standards, and it would increase traffic. I know that is a concern of some of the neighbors, but there are possible developments that could already meet that concern. Looking at the proposed highway commercial zoning, there are about twice as many, obviously, uses permitted in the highway commercial district as the residential agricultural. That's appropriate for the type of mixed-use nature of development that would take place along the highway. While we're not at any point here to address particular development on the property, the type of uses allowed in the highway commercial are consistent with what my client develops and has developed in other parts of the country. Just to list a couple of those, and without referencing any of them being particularly listed on this or developed for this property: hotels, restaurants, retail sales, entertainment venues, conference centers, which again are already something that could happen there in the residential agricultural, movie theaters and the like. All of those are currently permitted uses by right within the highway commercial that would be on the table for development on this property. Change conditions in the area that warrant the rezoning, that's another factor to consider. This is sort of generally known as the growth or development trends pattern for the area. Your planning staff included this, I think this, nope, not that map. Go back. There we go. Included this map in your packet. It's already pointed out that the highway commercial and light industrial properties across the street to the northern border, and then even down Ram Loop Road on the southern side of the property. Certainly, additional highway commercial in this area is consistent with that trend. But also point out that if you take a broader look at the stretch of 220 between Madison and the Guilford County border, this is already one of the areas, if not close to the area, with the most highway commercial property already zoned. And so in that sense, it is consistent with the trends in your development. But sticking with the idea of change conditions and development trends in this area, let's consider even further south down to the South Rockingham Business Park. This commercial area is less than 2 miles from the southern corner of the property being asked for rezoning here. As you know, that area has almost 270 acres zoned as light industrial with some highway commercial mixed in. Once that 270 acres is fully built out, the southern stretch of Highway 220 will look a lot different than it looks today. That is regardless of what happens with this track now or at any point in the future. There'll be increased traffic, more people, and a greater need for places for those people who are working in those businesses to live, eat, and shop. One of the additional factors is the impact on property owners. And as has been observed, I represent a client who has an agreement with the property owners to ask for this rezoning. There is no denying that one of the impacts for the property owners of this property is that their land value will increase with a rezoning. A highway commercial allows for additional uses in that area that are consistent with the growth patterns in your area, and the property owners are well aware of that. They have asked for this rezoning, obviously, prior to selling the property, and it will go through the rezoning before any final decisions on sales are made. There are clearly a lot of folks who have very strong feelings, and we recognize that. They will speak. You have heard from many of them already. But I also encourage you to consider the benefits to the surrounding community and the greater Rockingham County that will come with living and working near a high-quality mixed-use development. First, the residents of that part of the county will have access to additional amenities, services, and recreational activities that don't exist in Rockingham County right now and don't really exist in this part of the state. Property values in the immediate vicinity could increase. That is consistent with development, with the development my client has done in other parts of the country. This might mean more commercial development, and of course that is, we recognize that. But again, we think the net overall is a positive. And then finally, this sort of dovetails into the final factor from the statutes. You all know much better than I do, or my client does, what will benefit your county. We're here on traditional rezoning, and so particular uses are not on the table. We're not proposing that we do anything. We don't have a site plan or any of those sorts of things. But what I can tell you is that development of 192 acres in your county will be transformational. It will make a difference in your county in the future. Beyond the actual cost to develop the property, which would be significant to my client and an investment in your county, the project will bring thousands of jobs, first in construction and development of the property, later in the form of jobs in the mixed-use type development that my client typically builds. We expect that once built out, the property is built out, it will attract visitors to your county from across the state and beyond. The benefit to Rockingham County will go beyond what is spent directly on this property. Local hotels, restaurants, and other businesses throughout the southern part of your county and beyond will see increased patronage from people visiting this property. There's most definitely a benefit to the public interest that will reach beyond what is here in this immediate vicinity of the property. I'll close with just a reminder that we're here, again, on a traditional rezoning. There's a lot of planning to be done. Further review will take place. The county will have a chance to review any site plans, obviously, that come forward. There's about a half dozen additional types of permits and approvals that anyone developing this property for highway commercial would have to go through. Site plan approvals, zoning permits, zoning conformance approvals, commercial building site design and landscape standards, sign permits are just a couple I noticed from your UDO. Many of these will require review by your technical review committee, which does consist of several professionals. I won't list all the different folks that are part of that, but it's planning department, soil and water, emergency services, your county schools, the planning board again. So all of this will take additional work and review. This is the first step in what will be a long partnership between my client and the people of Rockingham County. I encourage you to vote yes this evening so that we can get to work on planning the future of this portion of the county. I'm happy to answer any questions with the remaining time or do that when I come back up.
I think we'll do that as necessary following this. So in a moment, I'm going to open the public hearing and ask you again, you're doing pretty good. Your cooperation and letting folks be heard as we go through this. We follow exactly the same rules as Mr. Metzler read to you. But I would point out before we start the public hearing that no matter what you say in the public hearing or what you've just heard from the applicant or what we might vote to do, when you go home tonight, nothing has changed. There might be a change in the zoning, but as far as casino and legality, as far as that is concerned, nothing has changed. Ben? It is true. Right. And now open the public hearing for case number 2023-12. I have a number of folks that have signed up to speak, and we're going to start with Sheriff Sam Page.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Sam Page, Sheriff of Rockingham County. I'm going to be quick. My address is 424 Dogwood Drive, Eden, North Carolina. Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, Mr. Messler, and public at large, we all know why we're here. We are here to have a discussion that we should have had a long time ago instead. We find ourselves at a critical injunction with elevated attention and mixed emotions. It's important for everyone here and listening outside to understand how we got to this point and how we can move forward. On June 12, 2023, a text amendment to the UDO was heard by the Planning Board at the request of county leadership. The proposal sought to remove the special use permit for electronic gaming operations. There was no board discussion and the measure passed 5-2 vote. July 10, 2023, there was an application for a straight rezoning request for a 192-acre parcel that borders not only Highway 220 but also residential properties and a well-known, well-respected nonprofit organization that helps provide service to children with disabilities known as Camp Carefree. The Planning Board had to apply legal standards in their decision to approve or disapprove based upon consistency with the UDO and reasonableness to the affected area, which they ultimately denied an application by a 5-2 vote. There has been several news stories in the past weeks about how a few lawmakers want to legalize casinos and video lottery terminals in North Carolina. There's also been a bunch of talk about where the casino sites may be located. My number one priority is and has always been public safety of everyone in Rockingham County. As it stands now, this rezoning request to put a casino next to Camp Carefree and the nearby residential communities put them at a potential risk of several crimes such as drug, alcohol, sexual offenses, property, and traffic-related offenses. Therefore, I respectfully ask that you consider the earlier decision of the Rockingham County Planning Board and deny the applicant's rezoning request on the premise that the site location is not appropriate for the area. As you can see by now, the amount of interest in allowing a casino to be established here, the people of Rockingham County want, need, and deserve the right to be heard on this matter. We have been left in the dark far too long. All of us here deserve full transparency and honesty in the operation of our government and leadership. I get it that there are economic benefits to this idea. However, our safety and quality of life should not suffer as a result. So where do we go from here? If the county leadership is sincere and acting in good faith and restoring transparency on this matter, they will grant the public the opportunity to decide whether they want to have a casino here or not. Let's have a referendum on that ordinary citizens of our community so they can have a chance to vote and be heard. In closing, this is a proposal with wide-ranging and long-lasting effects. We must operate with greater due diligence toward protecting the public than we have been so far. Thank you. May God bless you. May God bless the state.
Thank you. Hello?
Rodenbach.
Yes. Rodenbach.
Again, here we are talking about the rezoning of 192 acres, which is adjoining to Camp Carefree. Most of you say that you know about Camp Carefree, but I want to make sure that you know that Camp Carefree is not just a 6-week summer program. Camp Carefree runs pretty much all year long. We do have a 6-week regular summer session for our kids, but we also have a 7th week for sickle cell. And then in the off seasons, we also host Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, church groups, family reunions, and we open our doors up to people and other nonprofits that need to be there and can benefit from our facilities. Camp Carefree has been in existence for 37 years, and it's been adjoining to this property for that entire time. I know that you say that The planning board doesn't really have any expertise, and that's fine, but the planning board is picked by you all because you depend on them to review these issues and to give you advice and to give you direction as to what you're going to do with future zoning parcels. Your zoning board, your planning board did look at this, and they said no. And they said no for valid reasons. They said no because you want to use Ram Loop to be the entrance to this facility. It doesn't matter what you're going to do with that facility. We already have Skywalker, Star Cycle, Charles Rakestraw's Bed and Breakfast, other houses that are right there on that road, and Camp Carefree's only entrance, the only entrance to several other people that live on Carefree Lane. We are going to be trapped. We are almost trapped right now because of the traffic problems at Simpson Road and 220. This is something that's been brought to your attention many times in rezoning situations. I remember Sherry Everett stood right here when you were doing Noonan Road, and she begged you not to do that to her neighborhood. And as Sherry stated this time when we were talking about it, let's don't play kick the can. Let's stop right here and take responsibility for what your jobs are to oversee the benefits of the citizens of Rockingham County. Don't just look to the developers who keep coming in, wanting to buy our property, wanting to overcrowd our residents, wanting to take parcels of land and turn them into entertainment districts. I heard Mr. Richardson say tonight to Mary Lee Anderson, "Oh, you're going to be rich now." Well, Miss Anderson is already rich. She has a rich, loving family that cares for her. She is in her 80s, living right there on the doorstep of the property that you're going to be zoning. You don't have consideration for the fact that she's lived over 60 years of her life right there in that one spot on her land, which is residential agriculture. All we want is peace. All we want is for you all to look after us, to make sure that our children are safe, that our neighbors are safe, that our roads are safe. And we ask that you take that into consideration and deny this rezoning.
Thank you, Ron. Elizabeth Corona.
My name is Elizabeth Corona, and I live at 125 Mulberry Lane in Stokesdale, Rockingham County, and I defer my time to Brian Golden.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Brian Golden. I'm an attorney with the Van Winkle Law Firm in Asheville, North Carolina. My address is 11 North Market Street. Notwithstanding the fact that I live in the western part of the state, I have been retained by a significant number of individuals, including Camp Carefree, to represent their interests in this rezoning process. I sent you the email with the attached correspondence, but in light of the fact that I just sent it this afternoon, I thought maybe it would be advisable to bring it to you in paper copy. What that shows is about 15 affidavits attached to my letter to you all opposing this rezoning application from all of my clients, indicating their opposition to it. Their opposition not only based on the unreasonableness of it, but the fact based upon an expert report in that handbook or in the letter that their property values will depreciate. We heard Mr. Quick up here saying that it's going to bring extreme economic growth and benefit. However, the hard facts are the individuals who live in and around that community that surround that property have an opinion that it will decrease their value. One of your core tenets of your comprehensive plan is economic development. But your economic development of Rockingham County is not for the benefit of one at the expense of many. In fact, when you're looking at economic development, it says you want to have sustained growth for the benefit of the local community. When you have the number of people that have been here today speaking out in opposition of it, the additional 15 that are attached to the letter, and plus the others that are going to talk to me, that are going to talk after me, that flies in the face of what your economic development stated in your comprehensive plan is supposed to do, and that is for the improvement of life of all of your residents. As a result of that, it doesn't comply. This rezoning request doesn't comply with the comprehensive plan. As Mr. Quick said, 160D 605 requires that you look at the compliance with the comprehensive plan and the reasonableness. He read to you several factors in 160D, but then he went on to say, but you're not required to consider that. And that's where he's wrong, because your ordinance specifically says that at a minimum, you shall consider, the following factors: the size of the tract in question and the zoning district and existing land use of the surrounding property. You have to consider it. Mr. Quick would have just wanted you to wipe that away and offer no consideration of it. But when you look at the size of the tract of the land, 192 acres, majority of it, a lot of it is in that G3 district, the O2 district. You know what one of your stated goals in that O2 district is? For it to remain predominantly agriculture for the next 15 to 25 years. With this development, as it's slated for, you're going to have 192 highway commercial uses spread out across the entirety of it, from the north, Dogwood Acres, to the south, Camp Carefree, and to the west, all those residential, those larger residential developments. That, again, is completely unreasonable. And then we've got to unmask what that text amendment really was. And I want to get on that. No one really talked about that. That text amendment that you all adopted last month not only removed electronic gaming from special use permits, but it said any use licensed by the state and state entities are now allowed to be operated by right in the highway commercial district. And I need to say that again. Any use licensed by the state and state entities can operate by right in the highway commercial. You are required under North Carolina case law to review all uses that can happen in the highway commercial when you're looking at the reasonableness of this use. When you go to North Carolina Business and Operational License Database, that is a database where the state issues licenses, you're going to find uses from hazardous waste generators, incineration facilities, industrial landfills, liquid animal waste operations, mining, and wastewater sewer collection. You've got to consider all of those 7 uses as possible uses in that highway commercial zone. Why? Because the applicant said it's a straight rezoning. We can use it for any and all purposes in the highway commercial. And what this board did 2 months ago was allow any use licensed by the state, which then brings me back to the applicant. The applicant, as is required under Section 33.02, was supposed to provide a detailed statement and other circumstances and factors, including a statement of reasonableness, why this application should be approved. That requirement hasn't been satisfied. If you look at your application in the packet that was given to you, the applicant did not provide that detailed statement. And why is that important? Because your ordinance says all applications shall be complete. And an application has to be complete under your ordinance with that detailed statement. This board can't look at this rezoning request today. Why? It's not complete. It flies against what your ordinance says. Supreme Court case of Humble Oil versus the Board of Aldermen of Chapel Hill says if any action is taken on an incomplete application, it shall be set aside.
Casano, Kalo Foods.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Michael Casado. I own 119 Carlton Park Drive. It's a commercial gluten-free bakery, and it is one of the two light industrial parcels about 1,000 feet on the other side of 220 from this parcel. I had sent you all an email document, and Mr. Golden, the attorney prior to me, just covered half of it. One of the things that did come up, though, in this process since I sent this, the zoning or the use was changed from special use to permitted. And under special use, that change took place after this application started. So the way that I look at this, it doesn't apply to this parcel because of the timing. And the other part of it is that under the special use, there was a setback. If it's a casino, 1,500 feet from protected property. And that looked to be somewhere in the 85-acre area that would be setback on this particular property. Further review, I would argue that Camp Carefree would also be subject to that 1,500 feet setback because it would fall in as a child care and playground, which is also under the setback rules. The other part of it is that in reviewing everything for this zoning, the one thing that became a glaring concern, I guess, for me, because I do have a background in real estate investment and was a broker for 10 years. There's nothing in the zoning plans outside of residential that has any identity as far as density. There's nothing that limits how tall a building can be, how many units a building can be. And what I've asked for in the letter is that you put in a zoning moratorium until you can review the zoning rules and actually incorporate that into the zoning plan. And this will probably reduce the value of my property by dumping 192 acres of commercial right there across the road from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Christie. Christie's up. Johan.
Good evening. My name is Christine Dome. I live at 525 Dogwood Acres Lane. My property directly boundaries this 192 acres. I'd like to start simply, don't have this in my plan, but the applicant did state that there was a buffer already in place between the 192 acres and Dogwood Acres Lane. That is really not true. That land has been forested significantly over the past few years, and there is really only one line of trees that have a border between us and that property. We moved to Rockingham County in 2004, so we've been here almost 20 years. In that time, we've watched I-73 come up from nothing to a significant interstate highway and have known that development was coming. I support development. I support Rockingham development in Southwest Rockingham County. However, I believe that the 192 acres being rezoned to highway commercial is an irresponsible idea. 192 acres could hold approximately 4 to 5 Walmart shopping centers, not just the Walmart, but the parking lot, as well as, if you picture the one in Mayadan, the entire series of commercial developments around it. That type of development would bring potentially a Walmart of a significant size, could bring thousands of people in and out on a daily basis. And if you factor in that we're talking about the size of 4 to 5 of them, we could have significant thousands of people coming in and out. This land does not truly border US 220. I mean, it shares a property line with US 220, but it is accessed by 2 to 3 rural, mostly one lane, mostly unmarked roads. It is currently would be a significant detriment to traffic, especially on US 220, Future 173. The 2 turn lanes that would take someone onto Simpson Road, that would be the only access to Ram Road to get to the property at this time, can only hold 3 to 4 cars apiece. If you're talking about bringing thousands of people into this property on a daily basis, you are talking about backing up 220 for, can't even imagine how far. And that would have an impact on neighborhoods like Dogwood Acres, which only has 1 exit and forces us to turn right into 55-mile-an-hour traffic on a daily basis. And then potentially U-turn into 55-mile-an-hour traffic if we wish to go north. Having all of that traffic coming in and out less than a mile from our property, Gold Hill Road is also impacted, Carlton Road, significant other roads in the area. I am very, very well aware that roads can be improved. Roads can be removed, roads can be added, roads can be expanded, that sort of thing. But if those plans are not in place now, if they are not designed, funded, and approved, we're talking North Carolina Department of Transportation 5 to 10 years to get anything like that started. I watched I-73, and I'm sure the planning started before I moved here. 5 to 10 years. A commercial development would be in place far before that. And so I believe at this point that this rezoning should be denied, and we should go back and revisit other options.
Thank you, Christine. Catherine Williams.
Hi. Catherine Williams, 2102 Bryant Street, Madison, North Carolina. Some people have already talked about some of the things I was going to talk about this evening. For instance, the fact that that property equals 5 Walmart complexes, which is pretty shocking to me. And I was curious about how that compared with other available properties, commercially zoned properties along 220. So accepting the area around 68 where you have the light in the industrial complex area, there were no properties zoned commercial of that size along 220. The largest one is a 2-property area, 70 acres. They're in the kudzu patch by Madison. I think somebody's going to be putting apartments in there. And most of the highway commercial areas along there are only 7 to 20 acres, and they're only about 0.2 of a mile deep. So this 192 acres is almost a mile deep. The parts of it that actually touch commercial properties, 16% of the border touches commercial properties, and the other 84% abuts residential and agricultural residential lands. It directly abuts 4 small commercial neighbors and 27 RA and RP properties. Camp Carefree has 26% of its border, which is significantly more border than it shares with other highway residential properties. I could see rezoning of it on the front 40 acres, but it would destroy a beautiful spot, but I could see it. But because the property is almost a mile deep, it would cut way in, much farther than it should. And it's a beautiful tract of land. It deserves better treatment than that, and the people who live around it deserve better.
Thank you, Catherine. This closes the public hearing portion of this case. Before there is a vote, I'm going to ask the commissioners to ask questions.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant has a 7-minute rebuttal.
Sorry. Do you have rebuttal, sir?
I have no rebuttal, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have.
Would you come up forward, because there may be questions. Just be ready.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Counselor. Gentlemen, questions or comments?
I don't have any of Mr. Quick.
I do have one or two of Marzi.
Okay.
Well, I'm happy to come back up if you have additional questions, but I will sit down at your direction.
We appreciate your readiness there. Marzi, I believe you might be on the microphone.
Charlie wants to go first, it's fine.
Thank you. Mr. Mars, we've heard several things, and we've had several references to our land use plan, and talking about the planning board and such. Is it correct, the planning board voted unanimously to approve this back in December 14th of 2020, is that correct?
The land use plan,
Yes.
I believe it was May of '21.
This was voted on May
Oh,
2021.
yeah, the planning board, yes, sorry. Since I wasn't here, I'm not familiar with the date, but I do believe it was the end of that year, yes.
Okay. And at that time, and I don't know if you have a slide, but you could see that the whole I-73 corridor, what is that whole corridor designated as on the land use plan?
G3.
We talked about that.
It's designated
for
as the
business
G3.
development
Yeah, the
and,
high-intensity developments of both residential and commercial developments along the corridor. It used to be in the 2006 plan from the county line to Madison, and then during this plan, it got extended from all the way up to the Virginia border.
So this plan for this to be a business development area has been in place for a long time, basically.
For the southwestern part of the county, yes, sir. It was called an economic development corridor.
The taxpayers have spent several $1 million putting water and sewer in this area to encourage development and growth as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Marzi, do you have the GIS handy where you can zoom out a little bit further than that?
Yeah, let me see here. There we go.
So.
Let me find my bearings.
Yes. And I believe there's been a reference to approximately 270 acres light industrial that's just up the highway from this, right?
Yeah, just south towards 68 and 65, right here on your map.
Okay, and
It's
that.
the orange.
Yes, and I think I had calculated about 273 acres, but.
Yeah, I think the
you
tax
said-
cards add up to a little bit more than 270.
Okay. And I believe all of that was RA to start with, is that right?
Yes, sir. We rezoned some of that last year on Boone Road and northwards of Sylvania. Prior to that, the eastern side of that park had been rezoned, I think 2-3 years ago, give or take.
And as far as a scale, light industrial is more intense than highway commercial, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but that started as RA as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, actually, just about everything in the county, as you alluded to, started RA back in the mid to late 80s, once zoning went into effect.
Pretty much, yeah. Like I said, I believe when they did the rezone, or the zoning in the initial place, if it wasn't already a commercial use, they defaulted to residential agricultural.
Okay. And we've got setback and landscape requirements in commercial where they abut
Right.
residential, right?
Yeah, if, for instance, this property where it abuts highway commercial, it have 0 setback line, but where it abuts the residential, you're looking at 50-foot setbacks, landscape buffers within doing the screening for visual and noise. Building height, we have building heights in the commercial currently, so I don't have the chart in front of me, but we do have all kinds of dimensional standards in effect.
And you may not know this may be more towards Lance. I heard Commissioner Hall allude to it. I believe water and sewer started down the 220 corridor around 2004, 2005.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And that was with local tax dollars.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And since then, there's been upgrades, extensions, and that have been local dollars, grants, and state dollars, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I don't have any further questions at this point.
Do we need this map anymore?
I do not. I can't answer for.
Mr. Marziano.
I've got a couple. Marzie, it's been said that the UDO has not been changed prior to this summer. Hasn't it been changed several times since it was adopted?
Yes, sir. I think the confusion is on the cover page I put in when it was adopted and the latest update. But at the end of every update, there's an amended section of the date it was amended. We've amended it 3 or 4 times since I got here. We usually do it in bulk sections, and I believe y'all actually have a section on hold. But we do it in bulk when we notice these things crop up and try to make improvements as we go along. It's a living document, so.
Thank you, Marcy.
Well, gentlemen, I believe we're at the point, thank you, Mr. Marziano, you may sit down. I think we're at the point where we call the question either to approve or deny.
There may be some comments that, I don't know if want to make any comments or.
I have discussion, yeah, I would like to have. So first, I'd like to just thank everybody for coming out tonight. I've received emails, phone calls, voicemails. I've done my best to try to reach back out to every one of you that asked for me to call you back or try to respond to your emails. I've received many prayers and Bible verses and words of encouragement throughout this process, so I just want to thank everybody for that. Hopefully at this point, everybody understands that we are having a hearing to decide a rezone request at the behest of the property owners for a parcel of land that, from my understanding, they've been attempting to sell it's been on and off the market for more than 5 years. A lot of people that contacted me said they haven't even been in the county that long, but this property's been for sale that long. Many in the community have told me that this rezone would mean that it would not be in line with the hopes of the former property owner. I can't speak for them. I can only speak for what the current property owners have requested, and they have requested a rezone. And my understanding, like I said, since it's been on the market so long, anybody in this room, anybody in this county could have purchased this land. It's been for sale. I've had many people tell me how beautiful it is and how much they love it, but it's sat on the market and nobody's purchased it. And I've had many messages where people said, we the people want X or we the people want Y. And I've heard from probably 1,000 people, and there are 91,000 people in this county. So you could imagine I've heard a lot of different things and heard a lot of different feedback. Back when I was running for office and I won, the guy said, enjoy it now, because as soon as you make your first vote, half the people that voted for you are going to be mad at you. And that certainly seems to be the case with what's going on now. Powerful phrasing I've been hearing, we the people, we the people want this, we the people want X, we the people want Y. Call back to the preamble of the Constitution and the ideals of our nation. The most sacred of these ideals, according to our founding fathers, being listed in the Bill of Rights. Out of all the messages I've received for and against this property, nobody has ever mentioned the concerns of the landowner. The Fifth Amendment of the Constitution says no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Our founding fathers thought property rights were that strong and that important that they put it on the same line as life and liberty. Property rights include, but are not limited to, the right to buy, sell, subdivide, and rezone your property. People have said, we need to have a vote on this. We need to have a referendum. And a lot of people have been misled on what we can do as commissioners and what's available to do. But hopefully by now, with the information that's been provided by the county attorney, everybody knows that the commissioners are not able to provide a referendum. But aside from that, a bigger point is that a referendum process for a rezone goes against everything that's American. Could you imagine in a left-wing state like California if they decided that they wanted to hold a referendum to eliminate people's right to keep and bear arms? If 51% of the people decided to take away the rights of 49% of the people, is that just? Certainly not, because a right is not a right if it can be voted away. Tonight, I will make a decision based on my interpretation of the consistency and reasonableness of our land use plan, our unified development ordinance, and the idea that property rights and the use of property, as they see fit, within those guidelines. A few of the messages I've received have encouraged me to think about my legacy and what I'll leave behind. I have no interest in contemplating my legacy. but if I'm remembered for anything, I would like for it to be that I respected the property rights of the people of Rockingham County. Lastly, after all the scripture that I've received, I would like to return some wisdom that I've come across in my Bible study. It's from 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 2 through 5. This is from the New American Standard Version. In this case, moreover, it is required of stewards that one be found trustworthy. But to me, this is a very small thing, that I may be examined by you or by any human court. In fact, I do not even examine myself, for I am conscious of nothing against myself. Yet I am not acquitted by this, but the one that examines me is the Lord. Therefore, do not go on passing judgment before the time, but wait until the Lord comes, who will bring both things to light hidden in the darkness and disclose the motives of men's hearts. And then each man's praise will welcome him from God. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Well, certainly, there's been a number of comments, emails, phone calls, and I think I'm safe in saying that it's impossible for us to speak to every single person that has called. We do the best that we can with the time that we have. So certainly appreciate the public input. Have received people making comments for, against, asking questions. So it's been a variety of things. I want to point out there's been some reference to the historical aspect of what's taken place along 220. That entire corridor, it started with something called JobLink as far as converting it to an interstate. There were a number of local people that were heavily involved in JobLink many years ago, from Jim Daly from Miller Brewing Company, Jack Webster, an attorney in Madison, Dalton McMichael, who have started a number of different textile mills, Peter Osborne, Garland Rakestraw, are all Rockingham County, or were Rockingham County residents, heavily involved in pushing the designation of Highway 220 to interstate standards. That started about 1991. Shortly after that, in promoting that designation, there were a number of resolutions passed. And each of those resolutions are for, and the purpose of having that designated as interstate had everything to do with economic development. And that was the town of Madison in December of '93, town of Mayodan in January of '94, the Madison-Mayodan Rotary Club in January of '94, the county in December of '93. And there used to be a thing that I think our attorney probably remember this. I know I remember going to some of them. The League of Local Governments also did a resolution, and that was a collective group of all of the municipalities and government units in the county. They also did a resolution in February of '94. That entire push was also multi-state. That multi-state push was to have that interstate designation from Roanoke to Greensboro. There's also letters that were written by Congressman Locke Faircloth. There was also support from U.S. Senator Jesse Helms. I happen to know this because I've got the file in my office with all of that information, including the original letterhead from JobLink. So I know folks move into an area, they don't understand the potential change of an area, but this is something that I think I heard, I believe it was Commissioner Powell asked the question about 40 years ago or sometime in the 70s. I think he asked Marzi about that, potential designation. It's been a goal of the entire county to develop that entire corridor. And when I say the entire county, it is the elected bodies that existed 30 years ago. And that push has continued. There is that future interstate designation at this point. the water and sewer, the county dollars that were spent 20 years ago, and that was a decision of our predecessors in hopes of economic development. And then we get in, Commissioner Barrow mentioned property rights. The Constitution is actually a document that is a limit on government. And so everything is certainly the right of the people. And it is a property right. Everything I heard in the past was something that, it's my property, I can do what I want to with it. And that was always the goals of people of Rockingham County. Now, at least that's what I had always heard. Now I'm hearing I actually had an email of this too, and I heard a couple of candidates say stuff about referendums tonight. I mean, we're talking something that when we talk about referendums on property rights, that is certainly against everything that I'd ever heard before. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Well, I'd too like to weigh in on the issue of property rights, but before doing that, I'd like to say thank you for the calls. I too have talked to a large number of folks and have had some very good conversations concerning this rezoning and Rockingham County. You know, there's never a win situation in a rezoning. There's always those that oppose and those that want to have their property rezoned. And I've talked to several people on the western side of the county, even in the past, because there's a lot of growth going on over there. I don't believe it's government's job to tell somebody when they can sell their land or what they can do with it. I personally don't want the government telling me what I can do with mine, and I like the rural aspects of Rockingham County too. That's one of the things I heard a lot was, you know, we like to sit on our front porch and we like to look at the cows. Well, I understand that. I like them too. I like it so much that I bought half the farm I grew up on and we built a house on it. But I'm not foolish enough to think that the man next to me who has 100 acres, if he was offered $50,000 an acre for his land, would not sell it. If it was to be a UFO filling station over there, then I would just have that beside my house. The only way that I can control what's done around me is if I buy the land or I enter into a pact with my neighbors not to sell their land. And that's what I've told some folks on the western side of the county. Businesses don't run out there and strong arm our land in this county. They approach people who want to sell it, and they make a contract, and then they come up with some number that they're going to buy it for. We don't pick the properties, and they don't take the properties. There's a contract between two willing people. When we start, you know, one of the gentlemen tonight started talking about socialism. And when I was growing up, that was communism. We didn't call it socialism, we called it communism. And the way it was explained to me, that was where you never really owned anything. You might live in a house on a piece of land, but the government owned it. They told you what you could do with it. They told you how you could spend your money and all these other things that we see. And nobody wanted it. We didn't want it. And I don't want it today. And for me to tell a person, you know, now or forever that they can't sell their land because their neighbor likes to look at their cows, I think that's unjust. You can buy the cows or you can buy the land. That's the way it works in this country. And this area right here in particular has been declared a growth area for a long time. I understand that that's not setting well with a lot of folks here that are going to be impacted by this. But even some of you live in an area that had to be rezoned back, I think, in 2001 in order for your house to be built. And I'm sure at that time there were people that didn't like it then, probably don't like it now. But at the end of the day, we're tasked with making decisions based on everybody's interest and their rights. And tonight, you know, like Commissioner Barrow said, there's not been much talk about the people that own the land and what they want to do with it. They're the ones that pay the taxes on it. They're the ones that have kept the upkeep on it. And so they definitely have a say-so as property owners in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yep, Mr. Chair, thank you. Yeah, we've heard a lot of concerns that the neighbors have. But the fact remains is this area has been designated as a business development for a long time, that corridor of 220. The taxpayers in this county have spent many millions to upgrade the roads, to upgrade the designation to I-73, to, I think I said run water and sewer as well. But so with all that signaling in place that we've put in place to let potential investors, potential buyers, and existing property owners know, hey, this would be favorable. We would look favorably upon this type of thing, and that's where that land use plan comes in. But even that does not usurp a property owner's right to use his property reasonably. And so that being in mind, we've got to consider the property owner's position as well, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Mr. Vice Chair. We're all experts on what we want individually. It's a lot harder to speak for 92,000 folks. And whether you think so or not, we've all been doing research and all been doing listening. I don't know how many emails, letters, and phone calls I've had, but at least 2, maybe 300. And I've tried to answer them all because, by and large, they were polite, asked pertinent questions, and wanted to get the facts. I will mention there were 3 that I refused to answer because they were full of profanity and didn't feel that they deserved a chance. But the vast majority of Rockingham County citizens ask good, pertinent questions. So thank you for that. But no matter what, there have been a couple that threatened about votes. That's fine. Some of us in here, some more than others, have fought for your right to vote on that, and I fully support it. Do what you want. But we're going to try to do, and I'll speak for myself, but I'm confident my colleagues are saying, we're going to try to do what's best for 92,000. It's our job to manage change, and I will tell you this. It's a difficult job on occasion, and some of you have heard me talk about growing up in the 50s, enjoying playing in my grandfather's yard for sometimes 2 hours and not seeing a single vehicle go by, maybe a tractor. But at that time, there were 2 million people in the state. There are almost 11 million now. There are accommodations, and when we get more crowded, more accommodations are required, and we really have a job deciding what is reasonable and what is it worth. And I've heard a few people speak of Ann Jones. Ann Jones was a personal friend of mine. We were Sunday school classmates. And I've spent considerable time there volunteering and enjoying Camp Carefree. She often had the church folks down for gatherings and fires and so forth. And I do not presume to speak for Ann Jones at this time, how she would move. But I do know this about Ann. She was a dear, sweet, selfless saint who, when given a question, particularly a business question, would consider all aspects of that question. And that's what I hope all of us are trying to do, and I would encourage you to do. Some of you weren't around here. Many of you were. When Miller Coors came here and there was a hubbub, crowds like we're seeing tonight, talking about the world would end and drunkenness would pervade the entire county. Well, when Miller Coors left, there was about as much hubbub about them leaving as there was when they came. People got to see things. I'm just asking you to look at things in a complete manner rather than isolated. That said, unless there are further comments from any of the commissioners, questions, particularly questions of fact, for any of the folks that have spoken tonight, I would ask the commissioners now to either give me a motion to approve or deny the request of the petitioner. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion. I motion to recommend approval of the request to rezone the specified parcel to the requested zoning district based upon the consistency and reasonableness determination statements that are included in the board agenda packet submitted during the rezoning presentation and as may be amended, incorporated into the motion to be included in the minutes.
Motion made
Second.
and seconded. Further discussion or comments? I now call the question. All in favor indicate by the sound of aye. Aye. Those opposed by nay. Mr. Manager, do you have new business? Additional commissioner comments? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion made.
Motion made. Second, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor indicate by the sound of aye. Aye. Those opposed by nay.